The MBA Candidate Podcast is the world's most exciting show about what it's like to go to business school. We cover all the action, from the GMAT to networking, all the way to case interviews and behavioral interviews. Welcome to the MBA Candidate Podcast, the show that interviews business school students about life. I'm your host, Adam Miller, a first-year MBA candidate at the University of Virginia, Darden School of Business. On today's episode, we have Hatu, an incoming student at Ross. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
I got to tell you, I am so excited to have you on. Your energy when you walk into a room is contagious and makes everybody pick their head up. And so I can't wait to see what kind of answers I'm going to get out of you today.
Trust me, I have been thinking about this all week. I am truly excited. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I have never had the opportunity to be on one, but this is definitely a very exciting thing for me here.
Well, you are going to be a future leader, and so this is going to be the first of many times people are going to be begging you to come on their podcast.
From your mouth to God's ears, bro.
Well, I always like to start out with people's elevator pitches. Can you just tell me a little bit about your background and where you see yourself heading as you enter Ross?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Raleigh. Being born and raised in North Carolina, when I was considering schools, I wanted to look at somewhere that was different. And I found that at Cornell. So I was an industrial and labor relations major, which I know a bunch of you are probably like, what the hell is that? It is basically a different vantage point on business. We are looking at business from more of an organizational standpoint, focusing more on human capital, negotiation, collective bargaining, things of that nature. And I really realized at that point that I had a knack for doing that. Like, I really enjoyed this type of work and wanted to take those kind of skills that I really was able to hone in ILR to the workplace. At first, I went to a small private equity fund of funds right outside of Philadelphia. And then I eventually ended up going to Bridgewater, where I was working in the client services division. But I was not passionate at all about financial services whatsoever. I did some research. I talked to some of my mentors. I talked to some of my friends. And eventually, I decided that I wanted to really explore the tech industry. So I started a small business development advisory. And I think that one of the most important things that I learned about was the tech talent crunch. Kind of the war almost that companies of all different sizes and all different industries are having with trying to find good engineering talent. And that led me into tech recruiting, which is what I am currently doing right now.
I want to make sure I get a really good understanding for what it was like to work at Bridgewater. And I also want to dive into what it means to be a technical recruiter. But before we do that, I want to take a step back and talk about Hatu as a kid.
My dad was a computer engineer, worked at IBM for about 20 years. And that's actually why I was born and raised in Raleigh. Both of my parents are actually taking a further step back from that. Both of my parents are actually Nigerian immigrants. My dad came to this country when he was 19. My mom is a pharmacist. So growing up as a little boy, I think one thing I would say is I was like fake shy. Was definitely a very happy kid, a very talkative kid. My mom always used to tell a story about how I would be in my crib, like before I could even talk. I would just stand up and just start babbling.
That doesn't surprise me. I feel like that's even sometimes you today.
She always refers to that story and always still calls me Bumblebee because of that. I definitely loved meeting new people, but I realized that sometimes I can be a lot for people. So it's like I can come across as being like more quiet or shy in the first 10 minutes of meeting you. But after 10 minutes, I could talk to you like I've known you forever.
I want to go somewhere that I'm not sure if you're going to be comfortable with. I know I was looking at your LinkedIn as well. It said that you speak Igbo, and you were saying that you're from Nigeria, or your parents are from Nigeria. But when I look at you, I don't see someone that is from Nigeria necessarily.
So what you're referring to is that I am albino. I have much fairer skin than my brothers do and my parents. And yeah, that did also play a little bit into my childhood. From a family standpoint, it never really played in at all because it's not really anything that really ever came up. Even my best friend from childhood, he told me he's like, sometimes I forget that you're albino, honestly. But where it would really play in would be kids honestly have no filter at all. Like, if you want to know a true answer about something, if you really want to know like the truth about yourself or really know what someone's thinking, go ask a child because they will tell you everything they're thinking. The question would always be, wait, why are you white but your brothers are black? it took a little bit of time to understand that and kind of be able to get what that was and quote unquote be comfortable in my own skin. But by the time that I was in high school, like I was really at a point where I was like, okay, well, this is me, right? And I am me. So I would always like make jokes about it to put people at ease. And it wasn't anything like too self-deprecating.
It's funny that you bring up that kids are just so brutally honest.
Yeah.
But, that means by contrast, adults are not. Like I've met you a couple of times now, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's albino, but I don't know how to respectfully ask that.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things about starting a podcast and interviewing people is you can ask these kinds of questions.
Sometimes like I just like watch to see like how grown people like have such a hard time like trying to ask a very simple question. But if I notice that someone's like really struggling to ask and they genuinely just want to know, they're like, so why? So they're like, so you are Nigerian? I'm like, yes. They're like, both parents? That's how people usually. I'm like, yeah, both parents. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that there are people who are this light in Nigeria. I'm like, oh, because I'm albino. Like, really? My first thing that I always resort to is like, yeah, I have pictures. You want to see? And I jump on Instagram, which everyone knows I love Instagram.
So it sounds like there aren't too many downsides.
Part of the albinism actually is my nystagmus, so with my eyesight. So I'm sure that, Adam, you've probably seen this, but you'll see me with something like very close to my face. Like the font on my phone is huge. I don't care. I need it to be huge so I can see.
I think your personality of being boisterous and funny and also just not caring so much about what people think is the perfect combination for somebody that clearly looks different. I can't imagine a better combination between those three things for somebody growing up albino. At what point did you notice that shift?
I was fortunate in the sense that I really wasn't that made fun of, at least to my face. So I didn't really experience any kind of like bullying or anything like that. But I did this program called Presidential Classroom the summer after I want to say junior year of high school. In the very beginning of the program, like when everything started, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I don't want to have to explain myself to these people. Like I'm going to just kind of like mind my own business. Like, believe it or not, I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep quiet.
How long did that last?
For about a good 10 minutes, because when I started talking, like it just didn't stop. And I really sat there to myself, I was like, wow. I was like, these people really, really like me. I was like, wow, this is crazy. If I had gone through with the plan I had originally and just been fake shy, then I would have not met the full potential or met my full potential in this program or really enjoyed it as much as I did. That for me was kind of the turning point. I was like, all right, at this point, like people just have to accept me as I am. I'm all encompassing, meaning that like I am pretty inclusive of people. But at the same time, I'm not for everybody. That has always been a philosophy that I use to guide my personal life. And I think what I'm starting to realize now is there's a shift that I'm also trying to use this in my professional life as well.
Dude, I love it. You're dropping knowledge on them. If you could reverse the role, so let's say you weren't albino, you see someone who is, what do you think is the right way to approach that? Just in general, when you see someone who's different, are you of the mind that people should just ask if they have a question, or that they should respectfully not say anything, maybe ask one of their friends, maybe do some homework? Like what is the right way to figure out if you're curious about somebody's background?
That's a really good question. If you are somewhere where there's a big unknown, right? And it's almost like it's an elephant in the room, you want to figure out what is going on, but you know that you probably shouldn't ask or you're not sure, then you will feel a little like uncomfortable too, or on edge. I'm like, hey, let me ask you something. Hey, I got a quick question for you. And then regardless of what the answer is, I'm like, hey, listen, I didn't want to make any assumptions, which is what people say. It's like, I thought so, but I didn't want to make any assumptions, right? Boom.
Got it.
I am more of the school of thought, or I really appreciate when I encounter people who are like straight shooters, right? And it's a lot easier said than done. And obviously you have to show some decorum, but if you're thinking something, it's much better for me to know it and go from there. And then also like people are so different. Some people may appreciate more that you've like done all your research and like, you know, all these like great initiatives and all these like great centers and stuff like that. Like for me personally, like I don't care about that shit.
Me growing up, I always felt actually maybe the opposite of you, where I felt like a chameleon and that I could blend in every situation because I kind of fit so many different categories, so many different buckets. I'm like, do people think that I'm Hispanic? Do people think, I don't think anybody thinks I'm Native American, and my dad's African American, but I don't look it because my mom is so unbelievably pale and my dad is mixed as well. And so we'd be at happy hour and people would go, So, quick question for you.
It's funny you say that. And that is actually probably the most analogous thing that I run into, actually. When I have friends who are of mixed background, I'm like, hey, what's your ethnicity? Don't ask people, what are you? Like, that just is horrible. You're right. I did not know. I kind of had a sense. I was like, okay, well, he could either be mixed or Native American. But I was more highly inclined to thinking that you were actually of mixed descent.
So I want to switch back now to your career path. The one that jumps out at me the most is Bridgewater. What was that place like?
It's not for everybody. And I think that it's just a very different workplace. But I was able to learn a lot from that experience. That was a place where I realized, like, hey, you know what? Like, I like this. I don't like this. Like, I'm going to be very frank about it. And obviously, in a way that makes sense, that's not too off the cuff. Like, just being able to express yourself.
Yeah, I've heard they do a thing where they will literally, as you're speaking, give you feedback on how well you're presenting an idea. Was that something that actually happened in meetings?
Yeah, people will definitely give feedback, like constant feedback about how things are going. And I think that that's depending on how you do it. I have my views on that. But like through that experience, I was able to learn, okay, well, I learned how crippling it can be to like operate in fear. Say, for instance, if you're like leading a company and you're waking up every day to lead the company to not lose money. But that shouldn't be the mindset. It's like I wake up to go make good things happen, make good shit happen.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that a lot of people in a lot of organizations, they operate from a place of fear. And who wants to build their career at a place like that? You know, that's actually a beautiful segue into a plug for today's sponsor, man. Relish Careers helps MBA students find internships. And with the recent acquisition of Transparent Career, you can now see what the culture is like at your dream company before you even go in for a first round interview. This episode was brought to you by Relish.
Hi, I'm Zach.
Are we recording?
Yeah, Sarah, we're doing the ad right now.
Oh, hey, I'm Sarah.
And we are the co-founders here at Relish Careers.
We were once incoming MBAs, and we created Relish Careers because we wanted a way for MBAs and employers to connect online. So join relishcareers.com today to learn about the companies that want to hire you.
And to view our exclusive employer webinars this summer to prepare for school.
Thanks, Relish. All right, Hatu, what is your job now? And can you define what a tech recruiter actually does first?
What we're doing is we're working with multiple different firms to essentially help engineering managers be able to find more talent. So a lot of times, especially in New York City, people needed to find talent like yesterday.
Am I guessing right if this is how a typical day for Hatu looks? You get a screaming bunch of emails from a bunch of hiring managers who need to fill a bunch of jobs that they needed filled a week ago. And then you go on LinkedIn and type in all those different programming languages, see what names pop up, and then send 100 LinkedIn messages, hoping that somebody says, yep, I'm willing to do that job, and I'll come in for an interview tomorrow.
Well, it kind of is a little different. One, hiring managers usually aren't that communicative. And LinkedIn is definitely a big source that we use, but also, you have databases, you're meeting people, you're getting referrals.
How important is it that you also know those programming languages then?
I don't have to. I have familiarity with what they are and like which ones are newer. So I don't know how to program at all, but like I can have conversations a little bit about like what different languages are good for what. I think that that's helpful because like when you're talking to engineers, it helps you understand more of like what they're doing. Like this one's getting kind of phased out by just kind of asking these questions and helping both engineering managers and candidates themselves.
I haven't run into a lot of people going to business school that came from the background of being a technical recruiter. I worked in HR myself at a big company most recently, and I knew some people who had that job. When I asked them about their career goals, it wasn't to go to business school. So how did you gauge what you thought your chances would be applying to these top 10 programs?
I always knew I wanted to go to school. So I never viewed work after undergrad as like the end. I saw it as like a stepping stool to like be able to gather skills and be able to gain clarity.
So what other schools besides Ross did you apply to? How much thought did you give to your chances at each of those programs?
So I applied to 9 programs. For me, nothing venture, nothing gain. I thought that I had as good of a shot as anybody else had. Some instances that was the case, and in other instances it wasn't. You don't know exactly what those admissions officers are thinking or how they're viewing things. It's not formulaic. So if there's a program that you think you want to apply to, again, don't live in fear and apply for the program.
I love that. So in your essays, what did you write about wanting to do with business school?
From a short-term perspective, I wrote about wanting to get deeper into the tech industry from more of the ground level, the ability to be able to create and be able to take things from idea to a product that's ready for market. But there are not nearly enough people of color and women who are in the industry. So in the long term, I'd like to do something probably more entrepreneurial, where I am focusing on diversifying the tech space.
For your first job out of business school, though, give me 2, 3, 4 dream jobs if you had to pick them right now.
I don't know about company yet, but for roles, I am looking at product management and product marketing manager roles.
When I was applying to business school, I was not thinking about brand management, and I'd never even heard of product management before. Since then, I've learned so much through groups like MLT and the Consortium, and for people like you who are interested in those fields. Can you break down what a product manager is and what a product marketing manager is then?
Yeah. So I think and again, this is all going to depend on which company you're looking at, because every company defines it as different. But product manager is an individual. They're seen as quote unquote, sometimes people refer to them as mini CEOs. So you're working with cross-functional teams with trying to be able to bring products to life. If you think about something like Google Maps, there has to be someone who has worked with developers, who's working with designers, who's working with people from the business, that's actually like working as an in-between or liaison between these different groups to coordinate and quarterback the efforts to be able to bring this to life. For product marketing manager, it's like, what are the campaigns that you're using to be able to bring this product to market and be able to get adoption, whether it's market to consumers or to other businesses, like through business to business, right? What is the vision or strategy that you're using to be able to push that out?
It sounds like you don't need to know how to program to do these roles necessarily.
Well, it depends. So for product managers, it depends. And I was actually just having a conversation about this today. It depends on the company.
Got it. Well, I would love to have you back on next summer to hear about whether or not you landed a job like that or what you ended up doing.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. There's so much opportunity that comes with school. And I think that everybody who's considering it, like, I'm more than happy to have conversations about it. I know what I like, what excites me. Now it's time for me to build a career around that. And sometimes you don't have that luxury coming out of undergrad. It's almost like, okay, let me just take a job, right? And then it's like, oh my God, this job fucking sucks. But then it's like afterwards, this is an opportunity where you're in the driver's seat. Like, you are electing to go to school. You're not being pushed by your parents to go to school. You're making the decision. Like, you studied for the GMAT or GRE. You wrote the essay, got your recommenders together. You did all that stuff. So I'm really excited about school because that's exactly how I feel.
I think one of the things that's helped me get as far as I have is actually my inability to say no to things. Now that I'm entering business school, now that we're going to these amazing programs, it's actually the opposite. You want to get really good at saying, nope, I don't want to do X because I have this goal and nobody's going to take that thing away from me. So what are the chances that you end up, sitting in a room for a consulting interview or a banking interview?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's a question that I ask a lot to current students. My dad always used to say when I was in school, he's like, you want to go through the university, but you also want to let the university go through you as well. What that meant, you want to go through school like focused, but at the same time, you don't want to go through with complete tunnel vision. You should be willing to listen to other things. Now, that being said, that's very different than being caught up in the gust of all the people who are interested in more traditional business school careers. So will I listen to those sessions? Sure. Like, I'll go to an info session, but do I think that I'm going to leave tech? Absolutely not.
What if you got a phone call tomorrow morning from the Ann Arbor area code and they said, oh my God, we're so sorry, Hatu. We're not going to be able to let you in. Something fell through with your records or, maybe it's a background check or a health thing, or they made a mistake. What would you do if you got that phone call?
At that point, that's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. And I think that then I would really just have to resort to like networking my ass off and like doing everything that I could in my power to make sure that I'm getting in front of the companies that I want to. And just school gives you a platform where you're like, hey, listen, I'm going to this school, like this is what I'm learning in school, like interview me. But if you're in the real world and you're like competing against everybody, then it's a much taller order. What I've set for myself as short-term goals and long-term goals, those aren't going away, right? Those are serious. So I have determined that that's what I want to do. And even if I had to do it without school, then I'd find a way to get there.
Let's talk about a happier phone call. What was that moment like when you got into Ross?
Oh man, that was crazy. I've been waiting around all day, and I tell people GroupMe is one of the worst creations ever. You get very little good that comes from it and very much bad and a lot of stress that people like will induce on you because of their own anxieties and insecurities. So for some reason, I think it's just out of my curiosity, I had the GroupMe open on my computer.
No.
And I was like looking. Mind you, they started making calls, I want to say at 9 o'clock. I remember it was like 2 something, like I already gone to get lunch, was nervous as hell. So I let myself have Chick-fil-A, which is like one of my weaknesses. And I had the Chick-fil-A and I was just sitting there because that was the only thing I could eat. And all of a sudden I saw the phone ringing and I was like, oh my God. So I like pick up the phone and I run.
Where did you run?
I run to the conference room at work and I'm like trying to like make sure that the phone doesn't drop before I pick it up. And I'm trying to act like I haven't been running. And he's like, hello, this is Brian from Ross. I'm like, hi, Brian. He doesn't say anything. I'm like, can we get this show on the road? Come on. So then he goes through the whole spiel. Like he's telling me like how they read my application and like what they thought of it and everything. So I'm at this point, I'm hyperventilating. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to school. Oh my gosh, I'm going to school. He's like, oh, and there is one other thing. You also have like the Consortium Fellowship.
What?
At this point, I like lost it. Like I started weeping. I'm like, are you serious? I like literally like crying. I could tell that he's like getting choked up, and I'm like, like, thank you so much. And like at that point, I'm like, I need to go call my mom. But it was such it was like being on cloud nine. I remember the first time that I took any kind of practice GMAT nonsense was probably like 3 years ago. So I knew that I wanted to go to school, and just at this point, knowing that like it was happening, it was an unreal feeling.
So you applied to 9 schools, and this was the first one that contacted you with positive news.
Yes.
And you got a full ride from the consortium.
Yes, I did.
Wow.
I did. So, yeah, God is good. At the end of the day, it ends up working out. People would tell me that before. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's easy for you to say because you already like went to school or you already like got into school. But like truly, as someone who's made it to the other side, it really is going to be okay.
When I got that phone call, I think for the next 48, 72 hours, like I could not stop smiling. Nothing could get me down. And then I slowly noticed that like, then I was going back into the real world day to day. Like I'm sure similarly for you, you're not walking around with just the biggest smile all day and nobody could get you down. You're probably back, maybe not to the doldrums of taking the GMAT or writing the essays, but it's just regular life again, right?
Yeah, it's just regular life, but it's much easier to operate when you know that there's the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it does not feel real. I can't believe that it's actually going to happen still. If you could go back again to like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and talk to little Hatu, what other pieces of wisdom would you want to share with them?
I would tell people to first and foremost, like, take care of yourself during that time. It's not worth it to completely like shatter everything else that you have in your life. As hard as it is, get some exercise, please. Eat right, take care of yourself, do little things that will make you happy.
I love that you're saying that. I actually think I got in better shape during the MBA application process because I knew I was going to have to go study every day for an hour or two and write those essays. And the only way to combat that stress was if I built in a workout. I'm one of those people, if I have the whole day off, you know, I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to eat poorly. There's not going to be a schedule at all. I want to end with some gratitude. I want you to think of 5 things. I'm going to challenge you to think of 5 things that you are grateful for.
Every morning when I wake up and I get on the train, I start off by praying. First thing, a lot of times like people will pray to ask God for things, but I start my prayers off by thanking God for things that he has given me. So I always thank him for the health of my family. I thank him for my friends. I thank him for the opportunities that he's given me. I'm thankful for myself, right? I'm thankful for like the person that he has made me and the man that he is molding me to become, because I personally like myself, right? Obviously not in a narcissistic way, but I can look back and see, oh wow, like this is who I used to be is like, Jesus Christ, that guy was corny, or like that guy was like not a good person, or this is something that you were before that was good and you're not that anymore. Like you should like go back to that. So I thank God for being able to help me realize that and helping me like progress forward.
I got to tell you, one of the things that's hardest about doing this podcast is I wish that so many of these people were going to school with me. And one of the best things about business school is really just that aspect of it selects for people who want to better themselves, who have already done great things and will continue to do great things. And so although we're going to different business schools, I really hope we can stay in touch. And I look forward to following up with you, man.
Yeah, no, we definitely will. You have my number, you know where to always reach me. And yeah, no, absolutely. We'll definitely be sure to stay in touch. I'm looking forward to coming back for round 2.
That's right, man. And round 3. Hatu is an amazing guy. He's genuine and easy to talk to. It seems like he's overcome his insecurities by simply demanding authenticity out of himself. Above everything else, business schools care about their brand, and they want to be institutions that place safe bets on people who are going to be leaders. Hatu is someone that everyone looks up to. He uses the perfect blend of humor and candor. And while he might not care what people think of him, folks sure do care about his opinions. I believe Hatu could pick just about any industry to conquer, but I love that he's not wavering from his interest in high tech. Sure, he's going to go to a few banking and consulting info sessions during his first semester at Ross, but mostly it's just because he's fascinated by what other people do all day and because he wants to help his classmates with their recruiting efforts. Whatever Hatu ends up doing, I'm glad he cares so much about diversity and inclusion. He's exactly the kind of person you want on your team. On the next episode of the MBA Candidate Podcast, we'll speak with Chris, who's heading to the Stanford GSB. Like me, Chris also grew up in a flyover state, and his high school guidance counselor also told him that filling out an application to an Ivy League school like Dartmouth was a waste of time. When he got to Hanover, though, he learned about Silicon Valley, and then he successfully landed marketing and sales internships at Google and YouTube. Chris was most recently a product marketing manager at Twilio, a 10-year-old telecom company that helps Airbnb hosts and Lyft drivers stay safe and anonymous after their interactions. This summer, before business school starts, Chris will be doing a 6-week internship at Walt Disney to help the organization with their new on-demand TV streaming business strategy. Tune in to hear Chris and I discuss his passion for tech and media, the worst job he ever had, and why he hasn't ever owned a suit. I'm Adam Miller, and this is the MBA Candidate Podcast.